Welcome back to FreightWaves Now on this Friday morning. We've got our next guest ready to go. It's going to be a battle of the Andrews right now. I've got Andrew Lockwood from Suddath Global Logistics talking all about why we should be more afraid of Christmas than we are of Halloween, I guess.
Well put. No, happy Friday, Andrew and Kaylee. Glad to be here. And I hate to be so bah humbug here late in June, but listen, I'm looking at the ghost of Christmas future a few months ahead. I don't like what I see. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, we are exactly 6 months away from Christmas. It's June 25th, so exactly 6 months from now, we'll be sitting down to open our presents. Hopefully, you're already ordering these presents now, right? Because we're talking about the possibility for not being able to Christmas shop once we hit that peak season.
Exactly. And I think there's a couple things I want to look at here. But picture this: you sit down with your family for Thanksgiving dinner, you're watching the football game, and there's a nice car commercial, the one where they wrap it in the bow and they say, buy your Lexus, buy your Toyota now for a slot and get the car in late 2022. That kind of stuff is what we're talking about. I think we're just going to see a Christmas and a holiday shopping season like we've never really seen before. Let me point to a couple things. One, we continue to see the international space in high demand right now. The shippers and the international freight forwarders have all of the power there, where the prices are just astronomical. We're starting to see this divergence of the haves and have-nots. You've got Home Depot getting their own container ship to get stuff here into the U.S. You've got the parcel carriers. UPS just came out with this week. I think you guys did a great job covering this story. But we're going to see surcharges as high as $6.15 per package for some of these mega shippers. So whether you're buying something online from a retailer, there's a chance those shipping costs are going to go up, and it's going to get passed back through to the consumer. Empty shelves very well could be a possibility for certain retailers, especially the smaller to mid-sized ones. You got to put yourself in their shoes. They're probably a little more strapped for cash, and that cash is not going to be tied up in inventory. They're going
Mhm.
to have to think really hard. Do I want to pay the premium to get the stuff on my shelves, or do I just try to sit and wait and get it as I can? So I think we're in for a really rocky peak holiday season. I hate to be the bearer of bad news there, but at least it's something we can talk about now to give some insight and visibility.
Well, Andrew, you are exactly right, at least your feelings about the future. If you look at the Prime Day data that's come out about Amazon Prime Day, you see that there were many fewer discounts this year than there were last year because inventory is so low and because those smaller retailers that make up the vast majority of Amazon's marketplace are dealing with strong demand generally. So they didn't feel that they needed to put discounts out this year. And if you read through some of the comments that I saw on Business Insider and CNBC and some other places that had spoken to some of these small shippers, they were all speaking of that they were kind of just looking at what they had, not worrying about bringing more inventory in and trying to make deals and trying to drum up demand for the stuff they have right now because they weren't expecting this to get any better. Are you in that same boat? I mean, I was thinking about, you said that international demand is just off the chain right now, and I'm looking at India, I'm looking at Brazil, I'm looking at major economies that are suppressed right now, at least from an import and a container flow standpoint. Those countries, hopefully, if they get vaccines and hopefully get COVID under wraps, they'll be in higher demand in the back half of the year when we're still going to be in really high demand. It seems that all this demand is peaking and we're not even at peak season yet. Do you expect it to get even worse from here?
I actually do. I think it's going to get even worse. I was flying back from Los Angeles last night, and the plane went over the port, and you can still see so many ships off the port of Long Beach. And good grief, it's the end of June here. I really don't think it's going to get any better. When we look at kind of the macro economy, there's this risk with inflation where we all know inflation could get worse. I actually think this holiday season is when we as the consumers are actually going to feel that maybe legitimately for the first time. If you're in the construction industry or buying a home, you already know lumber is super high. Now, the bulk prices are going down, but retailers like Home Depot and Lowe's, they are keeping retail prices high because they bought high. For us as consumers, you're exactly right. I don't think there's going to be many discounts this holiday season. We're going to feel the effects of much more cost in the supply chain being passed on to the consumer. Plus, there's just not going to be the discounts there this year. So, we're going to feel inflation a bit more than we have in the past few months, and it's going to be a little bit of a bah humbug season.
So, Andrew, last year, Amazon pushed back their Prime Day. They pushed it to the end of October. And that kind of started off this 75-day peak buying season that started with that Prime Day deal at the end of October and did not let up until the start of the holiday season. Now, Prime Day just happened the beginning of this week. We're looking already at back to school shopping. It's hard to believe, but school starts, in about a month for some folks. And then we're going to go from that, and then we're going to get into that fall holiday season. People are going to come back from their travels, and everyone's flush with cash right now, right? And Americans are still spend, spend, spend. Do you think that we are going to get any break at all in what people are spending between now and the start of the true holiday shopping season? Or is that move away from travel, back to school shopping just going to start and propel that 75-day peak season into a 6-month peak season?
Yeah, I think I see a trend towards a longer peak season. Now how long this year? It's kind of hard to tell, but we do know that the e-commerce sales as a percentage of total sales continues to really grow, and that was started last year with COVID. I continue to see that trend continue to expand. So with more online sales, I think you have more spread out purchasing for kind of peak season purchases. uh, that's kind of what I see in advance. I think a lot of consumers know this. They're checking on the products they want that are maybe high ticket items. They're not in stock. They know they've got to buy them more in advance than maybe what they did last year. So I do think that's going to be a natural expansion of this peak buying season. It could actually kind of flatten volume. So with what we saw last year, with some of the congestion in the parcel networks with UPS and FedEx specifically, that actually could flatten some of that volume if the buying season is expanded. So that'll be an interesting trend, I think, for all of us to watch this year.
Yeah, I thought that that was one of the reasons that Amazon kind of brought forward their Prime Day was to pull forward some of that holiday demand
Give
to
it a
spread
little
out,
break.
keep their network at least a little bit in balance. But what are you seeing, at least on truckload side? What are you seeing from, let's talk about, the transportation side for a moment. Are you seeing any type of trend that's worth mentioning? Are we seeing any declining capacity, or, what are you seeing? We're seeing at least rising rejection rates into the holiday season, but that's kind of a seasonal adjustment here. What are you seeing at Suddath?
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing with rejection rates still somewhat high. I mean, at the end of the day, the transportation companies, whether they're international, shippers or domestic trucking companies, they hold all the cards here in the game of poker. I think we're going to continue to see prices escalate. For example, just getting drayage from the port to a warehouse, even locally. I mean, you're looking at $1,000 in the LA market. Potentially even more if you want to, if it's got to be done quickly. So, at the end of the day, who holds all the cards? The transportation carriers. The focus has been not as much on the driver shortage recently with all these other disruptions going on in the supply chain, but that's still a very real thing that we're talking about, especially with cross country trucking. There's much more demand for kind of these local driving jobs. So I don't see that cooling down anytime soon, at least through the end of the year. But again, it's a trend I'm going to be keeping an eye on.
And so, Andrew, let's take a little bit of that macro lens. And we focus a lot on the Port of LA and what's going on the West Coast. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing when it comes to the East Coast. Of course, you guys are down in Florida. What about the Port of Savannah? Georgia's really, really hot. The Atlanta market's really, really hot. How is kind of this East Coast, West Coast dichotomy shaking out when it comes to the trucking industry?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of shippers that have demand across the U.S. have started to look at using and leveraging the East Coast ports to offset some of that pain coming out of LA. And so what you've seen is just a lot of demand, kind of peanut butter spread across the East Coast. We're very close. Our headquarters is in Jacksonville, so we work quite a bit with the Port of Jacksonville. I mean, they've seen tremendous growth. Savannah's seen tremendous growth. The ports in Texas have seen the same thing. I don't think there's a port in the East Coast that hasn't seen some kind of good byproduct from what's been going on out in LA. But you do have to remember, like, if your stuff's coming out of Asia, it's just that much more. It's a little more cost, and what you're banking on as a shipper is that you're going to have quicker access to your goods. It may not be cheaper. It actually may be a little more expensive because you're going through the canal, the Panama Canal, there to get to the East Coast. But you're going to have there's a better chance you're going to have access to your goods quicker. So same thing, just a little bit drawn back where carriers are still charging high rates. It's just not as large as what we're seeing in LA.
Hey, Andrew, there's this really interesting trend we've seen out of the Port of Savannah. So if you look at the outbound tender rejection index out of the Savannah region, it's actually higher on an average basis than all of the major lanes that are coming out of Savannah. So Savannah to Atlanta, Savannah to Columbus, all the typical lanes that, that imports would have flown through maybe this time last year. But basically what that tells us is there's a lot of new lanes being created coming out of Savannah, basically from networks reshifting and pushing through Savannah to different destinations. And they've got very high rejection rates on those lanes. Do you see the same thing out of Jacksonville? Is there more freight coming in there and actually creating new lanes, new destinations out of Jacksonville?
There are. I mean, a lot of shippers, at least and I'm talking larger shippers here, typically have 2 or 3 nodes to their hub and spoke network. And so what you're seeing now is this influx of East Coast freight is indeed kind of creating more power lanes. So, for example, Jacksonville to Atlanta, I think in general there's a lot more volume going there. Atlanta's a strategic place, so is Chattanooga on the East Coast. Areas like Charlotte, Jacksonville to Charlotte, Savannah to Charlotte, those lanes, I think we're going to see a bigger increase. Remember, though, that some of these smaller port cities and there's only so much capacity there. So that kind of feeds into the expanded rejection rates you're seeing is there's only so much capacity. Those drayage companies, again, hold all the negotiating power when it comes to how quick you're going to get your goods out of the port.
All right, Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. We'll see more of you next week. I hope you have a great weekend, my man.
Absolutely. No, it was great to be on. Happy Friday, and sorry for the bah humbug.
No, definitely. I think it will get better. I mean, I hope it to get better. You see that there are retailers taking huge steps to try to avoid this and mitigate this. He mentioned Home Depot with them chartering their own ship. We're going to see some other big moves that retailers make to ensure that they do not have empty shelves on Christmas. That would be treacherous given the strong consumer demand we have.